Alright, so in this video I wanted to cover a very common question I see and a definite worry a lot of new business owners have is they say, Jason, my EIN does not match the legal entity name that I set up in the state, whatever it might be, Delaware, Florida, Wyoming. Is that a problem? Is that an issue for me? So the short answer is no, it's not a problem. And I'm going to go through on this slide why that's not an issue, one, and two, why it's incredibly common. So the first thing to know, just some of the background here, once you set up a legal entity under state law, every U.S. entity needs to have an EIN. So an EIN is an employer identification number. This can be submitted either online or in some circumstances you actually have to fax or paper file a form SS4, which is the EIN application. So the EIN is the tax ID number for a company, or TIN, right? So individuals have social security numbers or ITINs. That's their version of a TIN. For a company, it's an EIN. So the EIN is absolutely necessary because every U.S. company has to file some type of tax return, and you can't file a return without an EIN. You also need an EIN to open any kind of bank accounts. You need an EIN to file payroll tax returns if you have employees. And you also need them to simply complete any IRS withholding certificate. So if you have to complete a Form W-9, you're going to need the EIN for the company, right? So must have the EIN. So now let's look at what are the naming limitations. So the IRS system doesn't allow all types of characters to be included in the name. So that's why it's normal to not have a name on your EIN confirmation that matches exactly with what you created under state law. So some of the limitations, valid characters are the following. So you can use numbers 0 through 9, all alphanumeric numbers, right? So A through Z, 0 through 9, those are all okay. You can have a hyphen in there, and you can use an ampersand. Now, what's commonly not included are periods and commas, right? So in this example, right, John forms a legal entity in Delaware, John Consulting Company, Inc. Notice how the legal entity name has a comma after a company, and then Inc. is abbreviated with a period there. That's okay to set up under state law. Perfectly normal, perfectly common. But the EIN confirmation letter is going to show the following because it cannot include the comma and it cannot include the period. So it is perfectly normal to not have the EIN match exactly. For the most part, it should match absent, all these prohibited characters. Okay. So what about e-filing? Does that create an issue? Also, the answer is no. Generally, there's no problem here, and here's why. When you file a tax return with the IRS, they are cross-checking the EIN against only the name control field. Now, name control is the first 4 characters of the entity name. That's it. So when you file a tax return, it's not as if the IRS database is cross-checking the EIN against the whole name. So they're not checking against John Consulting Company, Inc. All they're doing is checking the 9-digit EIN against the first 4 characters or the name control field. That's it. So if John here files a Form 1120S, so he files an S-Corp return, and the e-file database only cross-checks the EIN against the name control field, which will be John, all right, John. That's it. They're not looking at all these other naming words or characters beyond it. They're just looking at John, which is the name control field. So just to recap, very, very common that it's not going to match exactly. Don't worry about it. These are the only characters that are permitted in the EIN. So if you've got something else in there that was allowed under state law for your legal entity name, not necessarily going to make it onto the EIN confirmation letter. Okay, so that covers it. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, leave me a comment below. And of course, always appreciate a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.